There are many different types of vehicles in use today. Some big and slow-moving, some light and maneuverable. And they all have to share the same roads. But the major problem with sharing the road is seeing the situation in purely human terms. A driver gets in his car, and the car and driver become a single impersonal machine. A rider puts on a helmet and protective equipment, and like the car driver, some of his identifiable human characteristics, like his hairstyle or a great smile, begin to fade from view. So it's quite possible that the driver will treat the rider on his motorcycle in a way that he'd never treat him face to face. And the way the car driver treats the motorcycle rider is important, because in a collision, a rider is more vulnerable than a driver. Car drivers have a steel cage all around them. By contrast, the motorcycle rider has only his riding skill and basic protective equipment to depend on. But these very different vehicles share the same road. To give this some human scale, we're going to ignore the vehicles for a moment. Here are a rider and a driver walking down the street. Look at that. Nobody would consider that a reasonable way to behave on foot. And it's not a reasonable way to behave if the rider is on his motorcycle and the driver is in his car. The most common accident between drivers and motorcyclists involves a car turning in front of an oncoming motorcycle. Even good drivers sometimes don't notice motorcycles or misjudge the rider's intentions. To avoid this kind of hazard, drivers need to appreciate the differences between cars and motorcycles. That way, they can understand why riders do what they do. The first factor to consider is size. The driver and the rider may be the same size as people, but not in their vehicles. Motorcycles are much shorter and narrower than cars, so they present a smaller profile. If a driver is subconsciously expecting a motorcycle to be as long and as wide as a car, he may think it's farther away or going more slowly than it really is. The solution to this is to take the time and effort to look not just once, but twice, and yes, 3 times, to make sure just how far away the rider is and just how fast he's approaching. The motorcycle's size can make it difficult to spot. Motorcycles are sometimes hidden by traffic, road signs, and other distractions. Even if you are actively looking for motorcycles, you may not see a motorcyclist who is maneuvering safely and legally in traffic. If you saw somebody walking ahead of you on a sidewalk, would you think, why should he have the right to that whole space? So I'm going to share it with him. Now, you wouldn't do that to the rider on foot, and the consequences are much more severe if you do it in your car. Motorcycles will use the whole lane in traffic to see and be seen. What confuses car drivers is that motorcyclists may not always be in the middle of that lane. There are several reasons for this. They may be moving to one side of their lane or the other to see ahead better or to be seen. They may be avoiding hazards that mean nothing to cars, like debris, oil, or potholes. Either way, the motorcycle will use the whole lane, so don't try to share it. While passing and being passed, cars and motorcycles can come dangerously close to each other. Again, the most important thing to remember is that the motorcycle will use the whole lane to react to hazards that may mean nothing to a car. If a motorcyclist is passing you, you should maintain lane position and speed. A driver who unexpectedly changes lanes, speeds up, or slows down can surprise a passing motorcyclist, perhaps even endanger him. Allow the motorcyclist to complete his move. You'll find that many riders will even wave a friendly thank you. If you are passing a motorcyclist, give him an entire lane. The worst thing you can do is crowd into the same lane as the motorcycle. To avoid a dangerous situation, you should stay in your passing lane until you are well past the motorcycle. Returning to your original lane too soon can force a motorcyclist to swerve into traffic or even off the road entirely. Intersections are the most likely places for a collision for 2 reasons. First, because the car driver may not detect the motorcyclist. Second, If he does see the motorcyclist, the car driver may make a wrong interpretation of what the motorcyclist is doing. For example, the motorcyclist may change lanes to prepare for changing traffic conditions ahead. Or the motorcyclist may have to move to one side of a lane to prepare for a turn or to avoid a hazard that the driver doesn't see or doesn't worry about. The solution? Wait until the motorcyclist's intention is clear. You should also know that few motorcycles have automatic canceling turn signals, so riders sometimes forget to turn off their signals. Before committing yourself into moving into the motorcycle's path, be sure that you really do understand what the rider is going to do next. It's important for both riders and drivers to communicate their intentions, use your turn signals, and cancel them after a lane change. There's nothing more worrisome on a motorcycle than having a car following close behind. Now, this means the rider has two things on his mind: what's happening in front and what might happen from the rear. Why do car drivers sometimes tailgate a motorcyclist? Because a driver can see past a motorcycle easily. He may not consider the bike much of a threat or realize how close he actually is to it. The car driver may even be concentrating on the vehicle in front of the motorcycle. When following a motorcycle, allow at least a 2-second following distance. You work it out like this. Choose a marker that the motorcycle you're following is passing. For example, as the motorcycle hits the shadow of this bridge, count 1001, 1002 before you pass the shadow. That's your 2 seconds. By giving the rider a 2-second following distance, you remove the worry of being tailgated. The motorcyclist has more time to stop or to make a safer maneuver. Always look before pulling out. It's especially important to check the rear view and side view mirrors when backing up, and to look over your shoulder too. And remember, all vehicle operators must avoid drinking and riding or driving. Alcohol and other drugs reduce your ability to make important decisions about speed, distance, and risk. It's a terrible burden to be responsible for needlessly killing or even hurting another person. Now that you understand motorcyclists a little better, share the road with them. Treat them like the guy next door.